Greetings, friends. Operational situation at the front on the 12th of May. Well, let's start with you from the border areas of the Kharkiv region, where active hostilities continue in two directions. In the direction of the settlements of Lipetsk and Volchansk. Let's start with Lipsy. It means that several settlements have moved into the red zone. We just said yesterday that attacks are already coming for them, if, of course, they are conditionally held in these positions for 24 hours, then of course it is already moving into the red zone. Which is exactly what happened. Let's take a look at the changes and comment. From the arrow, they attack in the direction of Gluboko, which means in the south direction, and at the same time. There are attempts to advance along the forest belt from red, and again to the settlement of Gluboko. Markovets-Oleynikova move into the gray zone. According to the footage, which was published by the AFU fighters, strikes were carried out on the positions of Russian troops. Just at the intersection, already with the west of Oleynikov, south of the settlement of Markovets. Well, actually, activity within the approximately now outlined line is observed from the enemy side. In fact, there are battles on the approaches to the settlement of Glubokaya, for Markovets, and Oleynikova. In the area of Oleynikov, active ones continue. From the locality, Lukyans are attacking the locality dustily. So far it is on the near approaches to the enemy's position. Mainly small assault groups, and of course do not forget the Drug, reconnaissance by battle and so on. And a considerable number of Drug are scattered around the landings. And from the settlement of Borisovka, attempts are also being made in the direction of Lukyancy, and also along the border. In the direction of the settlement of Zelenaya. According to the changes, the situation looks as follows, including the village of Zelenaya, where there are attacks, and here. Both along the border of Borisovka, from Borisovka, and from the village of Sareda. It means that a plus or minus 51 square kilometer area has passed under the control of the enemy. In active hostilities, I repeat, we continue. Mainly they are pressing from the Oleynikov and Markovets areas. In the direction of Gluboko, and, accordingly, from the red arrows. Therefore, the fighting continues. We turn to the Volchansk direction. There are also changes. It is recorded that an area of about 27 square kilometers has passed under the control of the enemy. The situation looks like this. We have said that they are putting pressure on Ogurtsav from the settlement of Getisha, and at the same time, it is very important for them to land from the new Tavolzhanka proper, well, conditionally the new Tavolzhanka Arkhangelsk, where we have already voiced with you, they had concentrated forces. That is, the logistics shoulder is much closer than in the case of Lipsamy. And they actually began to show activity just the same in the forest area, which we have located west of Ogurtsav. In the direction of Staritsa-Bukrovatka settlements, there is activity. Therefore, it is very difficult to say what forces are currently involved in the Volchansk direction. If we talk about Ogurtsova-Pogruvakoy, because it is all concentrated in the forests, that is, very little is fixed in the open area. As for Ogurtsav, fighting continues on its already southern outskirts, of course. They will also be crushed along the forest area in the southern direction of Igatish. Active hostilities for the settlement of Plitanovka and to the south are also continuing, so along Volchansk, south of Plitanovka, respectively in the direction of Volchansk, and similarly on landings north of the settlement of Godish. Attacks are going in the direction of the city. Mainly from the information that there is, these were attacks exclusively it was the Drug that was recorded. There are no assault groups, they have not been transferred, but in any case the enemy enters the battle, conducting reconnaissance at the same time. Therefore, so far without fighting for Volchansk, despite a number of loud statements. But still the enemy is getting close to this settlement, and is ready to storm. Naturally, in order to stabilize, already in fact stating the wide coverage of enemy attacks, it is necessary to use additional forces, which is being talked about a lot now. which we need in other areas, where activity is also very large now, today. This is the Pokrov direction, this is the Kurakov direction, and the Chesver direction. In other words, we need a larger force there in order to stop the enemy. Well, accordingly, the enemy is doing such distracting actions that can develop into something more. Therefore, active hostilities continue. Moving on. On the Kupiansk-Kalimansky sector of the front, fighting continues without any changes both in the direction of Stelmakovka and in the area of Kislovka, positional fighting in the area of Sinkovka and Vostochny Turnov of the eastern Yampolovka is also positional fighting without changes. Seversky direction activity in the area of Belogorovka and along the railway in the direction of the excavation. So far, this is all positional in nature. The enemy's activity is very high within the gray zone. Just in the direction of the excavation, conditionally, in the direction of Ivanodarevka. Without, I repeat, significant changes. Well, we turn to the clock direction. Briefly on the northern flank, the fighting on the western outskirts of Bogdanovka remains unchanged. Fighting on the territory of Dachas north of the Canal District and the northeastern Canal District on the territory of Dachas is also not yet fixed that the enemy managed to gain a foothold. But at the same time, yesterday we stated one of the attacks of the Russian troops, we added a gray zone with you, as you remember. Now I will comment on this point in more detail. It means that the two Golubovsky mortars did not move from the reserve, then along the canal. Along the forest belt parallel to the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal in the southern direction to the Ivanovo Forest. But at the same time, that is, we stated only one vector or so, but it was not the main one, because, unfortunately, we had the main one in Ivanovo along the road T0504, both in the direction of Ivanovo and in the direction of the Ivanovo Forest already. The enemy advanced on a front section up to 3 kilometers wide to a depth of 750 meters. The situation looks like this. In fact, yesterday we stated with you how important the Ivanovo Forest is to the enemy, its part, at least the northern one, which just leads to the road, which is our last logistics, as we said yesterday, which did not fall under the fire control of even a partial enemy, and accordingly led to Ivanovskoye. But the situation was aggravated by the second vector of attacks, which was not yet known. That is, according to visual data, it was not published yesterday. But, unfortunately, the enemy has advanced along two streets Zarakhnaya and Voronezhskaya, in Ivanovskoye itself. Well, of course, it is approaching logistics. Therefore, if countermeasures are not taken in the near future, then naturally there will be a fall of the settlement, and the enemy will get the positions that he needed in order to attack with a wide coverage for an hour in the Yar. The hour in the Yar itself is the first moment. The second point is to transfer naturally larger forces to Ivanovskoye, in order to just start the pressure on the Ivanovo Forest. In the direction so far, we are conditionally talking about an hour in the Yar. The vector may change further in the south direction. But this will all show, so to speak, time, so to speak, to protect yourself from a flanking counterstrike. And of course, the enemy will already be pushing with larger forces on the Golyubovsky to mortar reserve. Everything will show, so to speak, time. So far, we see activity on the southern flank. Active fighting continues. Moving on. Then we have the Pokrov direction, Novo-Alexandrovka. Managed to repel all attacks. The main pressure, as yesterday, is west of Arkhangelsk in the direction of fortification from the enemy. As for Novopokrovsky, it means that east of Novopokrovsky and west of Solovyev, without any changes, active hostilities continue. But it was possible to repel the attacks, therefore without fixing. There are also active hostilities in the area of Amansky, and of course not Tailovo, and south of Pervomaysky. So far, we have not recorded any visual changes, everything remains within the red and gray zones, but as you remember, after any advance, the enemy needs 2 or 3 days to pull up reserves again and so on, pull up the bull. And then he continues active assault actions. Therefore, so far we are observing activity, but of a positional nature. And Krasnogorsk-Avka, unfortunately, two unpleasant moments happened in the city of Krasnogorovka itself. The first is, of course, the Krasnogorsk refractory plant, which has completely come under the control of the enemy. We said yesterday that they have gained a foothold in part of the plant and are conducting assault operations in the western direction. At the same time, there were attacks along Zheleznodorozhnaya Street. According to the footage that we saw, well, we voiced that there were attacks from Nakimev Street, in the direction of Ivan Franko Street, and in the direction of Hrushevsky Street. Unfortunately, the enemy has advanced on a larger scale than we talked about yesterday at the clarification of a small square. But it turned out to be much worse, because part of the central street has also moved.